Success consists of going from failure to failure without the loss of enthusiasm. These are the words of the famous World War II hero, Winston Churchill. These words summarize his life perfectly. He met failure after failure in his life, but because he had the courage to keep going, he forever left his mark on history. I've always loved history and been particularly interested in the history of World War II. Churchill is primarily known for his leadership of Great Britain during World War II, but today I would like to discuss how Churchill's life formed him into the man who was able to stand against Hitler and win. Churchill was born on November 30th, 1874, to Lord Randolph and Jeanie Jerome. He spent his childhood in Dublin, Ireland. His parents were very distant, but Churchill adored his mother, and he spent his whole life trying to prove his worth to his father. He did bad in school as a child, and in 1888 was sent to the Harrow boarding school near London. According to the Winston Churchill biography on the Biography website, Churchill was an independent and rebellious student. However, these qualities would prove to be beneficial to him later in his life. While at Harrow, he joined the Harrow Rifle Corps, which led him on the path of a military career. Churchill served in the British military from 1895 to 1899. His first encounter of failures came when it took him 3 tries to get into the British Royal College. However, despite these initial failures, he graduated 20th out of 130 students. During his time in the military, he served in the Indian Northwest frontier and in the Sudan. He left the Army in 1899 and tried his hand as a war correspondent. While he was doing this work, he was captured by the Boers in South Africa, but he escaped through a window and later wrote about his experiences. Winston Churchill had a political career of 60 years. Simon Heffer in the Churchill myth says Churchill had an unfortunate knack of finding himself on the wrong side of many arguments. This characterized much of Churchill's involvement in politics. Early on in his career, he made many mistakes and became a controversial figure. Churchill's strength in politics lay in charisma and his oratory skills rather than in his ability to make smart executive decisions. He held many political offices, including in 1908 he became the president of the Board of Trade, and in 1911 he was the first Lord of the Admiralty. Churchill modernized the British Navy and set up the Royal Navy Air Service. Unfortunately, he was behind several failed battles in World War I. One example of this is the Battle of Gallipoli. This resulted in the loss of 46,000 lives. In 1924, Churchill decided to become involved in Britain's economics, which he knew nothing about. He returned Britain to the gold standard, even when he was advised against it. This resulted in deflation, decline in exports, and a crippled coal industry. Because of these many failures, Churchill went without office for 10 years. The 1930s were a very difficult time for Churchill, and he spent most of his time writing and doing journalism work. Churchill faced failure after failure, but because he had the courage to keep going, he was able to leave his mark on history. Martin Gilbert in the Winston Churchill The Wilderness Years says, Churchill's ability to swim against the tide was remarkable. He had few allies and many opponents. Because of Churchill's ability to go against the flow, he was able to lead those who supported British rearmament against Hitler. In 1940, he became the Prime Minister. He's best remembered for his leadership during this time. Simon Heffer said, "It is hard to think of anyone in that period who would have led Britain with such certainty of purpose and inspiration, and who would have the qualities to handle our allies so well." Churchill formed an alliance with the United States and the Soviet Union in World War II, and this proved to be critical in winning the war. His strength in oratory and his determination led to victory for the Allied forces. In 1951 and 1955, he was Prime Minister again. During this time, he introduced many reforms, but they proved to be unfruitful years for the country. He retired in 1964 and died from a severe stroke on January 24, 1965. Churchill attempted many different things in his life, but he learned from these failures instead of letting them define him. Because he was able to overcome failures, it prepared him to be the kind of man who would be able to lead the Great Britain in World War II. I want to end with Churchill's own words. Success is not final, failure is not fatal, but it's the courage to continue that counts.